Hey PC gamers, and welcome back to the PC Gamer Chat Log. I am Lauren Morton.
And hey everyone, I'm Molly Taylor.
And this week, Molly and I are talking to our staff writer, Harvey Randall, about game genres, which it turns out is a more contentious topic than anybody is willing to admit. I think, it's just one of those, it's like the whole theme of this podcast, Molly, when we sort of conceived of it, was the things that make everybody in our work chat just start, like, the messages pile up, several people are typing,
yes,
and like game genres is one of them. Like, someone asks a question about how to categorize a thing, and all of a sudden it is a lengthy conversation. All other work grinds to a halt. Why do we like to debate this so much? I don't know, but it's gonna happen again here in this format. So before we get to that, what did you play last week?
I was gonna say not a lot, and up until like last night, that was true. But then I started playing Balatro. I do not know how you pronounce it.
I've been going Balatro, but
I've been going for Balatro. Okay.
I think that's how Chris said it when he was telling us about it on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yes. So Balatro, it's a poker roguelike deck building game. It's
speaking of the nightmare that genres are.
Yeah, speaking of the nightmare that genres are, it is a poker deck building roguelike. Yes, that is correct. There's no story, there's no characters, it is just you play poker, make number big. That is that is what it is, right? There's like elements like you can add extra cards to your deck, you can change the properties of cards, you can like level up the different hands that you can put down. I did a run today where I had like a joker that it was like every time I played a 2-pair, the multiplier would increase by 2. So I managed to get the multiplier up to like 40 something. It was like 42, 44. And then I had another joker that multiplied that multiplier by 3, but had like a 1 in 1,000 chance of breaking every time it got. It was chef's kiss. I don't know how that game has done such a good job.
Love when cards have durability.
Yeah, cards have durability. You have like glass cards as well that like also have a chance of breaking. Yeah. But like I do not understand how a game has made just putting cards down and trying to make a big number like feel so satisfying. It feels amazing. It's so good. It's so much fun. I did not think I would like it that much. I really like it. It's going to be one of those games I think I will be playing on my Steam Deck, and I'll be like, oh, just one more run, just one more run, just one more run. Like, when you lose early on, it does feel bad, but when you're just like barreling through because you have like a good combination of jokers, you're like playing to the joker's strengths as well. Oh, it's so good. It is amazing. I want to play more. I want to play it right now. I was playing it right before we filmed this, so I want to play more immediately. How about you, Laura? What did you get up to?
Let's see. I went back and was playing a little bit more Kinseed on my Steam Deck because I did like my Steam Deck dock was kind of just hanging out here in my office for no particular reason, and I now finally have committed to like, okay, put it down where it belongs by the television. So now you have the full suite of like play it on the TV or pick it up and play it on the couch, and then put it down and come back here to the PC and jump in Discord with your friends and like open up your same save file. Wow, it's magic. How wonderful. So I was playing a bit more Kinseed just for the heck of it. It's like, it's fun. It's silly. I think I've proposed marriage finally to my first person, so I can start like really capitalizing on the life cycle and like the generational content of that game. And then the new thing that I tried, because I did stick to my goal of new game per week, was Bandle Tale, which is the League of Legends like spin-off thing. You know how Riot's been doing several of those. There's a fighting game. There was like a
there's like a runner thing with a League of Legends character.
Wasn't there a visual novel too at one point?
There might have been. They've been doing a lot of like little spin-offs with
There are a
certain
lot
characters
of
or themes.
Yeah, lots of League tie-ins, and this one is a little cozy crafting game. It's about the Trist. I know zero League things. I have avoided it. I apologize. I have nothing to do with it. There's like a Tristana cameo, and then like other characters. Are they called bandles? Is that what they are?
I have no idea.
They're called yordles or something like that. I don't know what a bandle is, but I think they're called yordles. Is what the little dudes are. And you have your own little yordle, and you like there's like a little cataclysm. Everything is made of yarn. You have to craft stuff, open portals to other places. I haven't gotten that far yet. There's a focus on like throwing little parties for the yordles. You have to like decorate and craft items to have a gathering, and they'll like do little activities at the gathering, and you gather their like, I forget what the word that they chose for it in the game was. Their little like excitement, and you stuff it into your like portable backpack living thing. So it's very cute. It's been fun so far. I have enjoyed it. And the thing that I can't even talk about yet, I mean, I can talk about it, but I can't say anything useful about it, is Nightingale, because it is out right now. And I am like counting down the work clock until it's time to stop working and then start, working by playing Nightingale. So I can't talk about it right now. I don't know. But there's definitely going to be a lot of writing on the website about it from various people on the team by the time anybody hears this. So
yeah, fantasy crafting sounds cool.
Yet more survival crafting, except Victorian, and you have an umbrella that you sail around on. Yeah, and there are some Tudor style houses. Yes,
I want the Victorian vibes. That's what I want. You know what? I might dive into.
I want the fashion, and I want look. In every other survival crafting, we know I'm a building girl, right? Like I do the building. So you start with your wood shack. Once you like, eventually you level up, you get to have a stone shack. And then that's usually about it. In some of them, they're like post-apocalyptic, and eventually you get like, I don't know, cement or whatever. I made that up. The things come after stone. And in this one, it's not just wood to stone. It's like you have the wood shack, but then eventually it's like these cute like Tudor houses with like plaster and the crossbars and whatnot. I'm like, I just want to make something that looks nice.
Yes.
That people do amazing things in survival crafting games, make beautiful builds that look fantastic. I'm not that skilled. I've been doing my best for years. I've put in so much effort, so much time, so much love, and unfortunately my talent is mid-range at best. I just need the pieces to look pretty before they're even in my hands. So that's what I'm looking forward to in Nightingale, is pieces that are already pretty, and I don't have to work magic to turn them pretty. Yeah. So that's what we got up to last week / about to get up to in the next couple days. Let's go grab Harvey and talk about game genres. Yeah. Hey, Harvey, thank you for joining Molly and I to talk about game genres, which is a conversation. Look, it feels like it's like the game version of is a hot dog a sandwich? As soon as you throw it into the chat, everybody wants to spend 20 minutes yelling and litigating, right? If like Soulslikes or Metroidvanias get to be a genre, it's that kind of discussion. It is never ending. We are just as susceptible to it as everyone else. And so the reason we're having this conversation is that someone threw the hot dog sandwich into our team chat not too long ago. And with everything else, it's cyclical. It just like happens every so often. We were updating our list of best JRPGs is why this happened. And Wes polled our team chat, is Elden Ring a JRPG? And happy to report it was a unanimous no. We did all agree on that point. Elden Ring is not a JRPG. We all know that to be true because we know what a JRPG is. But then, of course, we inevitably got into the discussion of, like, is JRPG even a valuable label anymore? Does that carry any meaning? What about the other ones? And then we started arguing about, like, Metroidvanias and Roguelikes and cRPGs as well. So we're going to just, like, continue doing that a little bit because it's fun to just, like, stretch our brains and our legs every once in a while.
It's so fun. I love to argue about really pointless stuff. That's the whole point of a podcast, right?
Yes.
The best the best way to get people engaged in the conversation is to argue about the definition of words. It's my favorite
Yes.
conversation to have.
Okay, so that leads to like my first question on this is what are genres even for? Like I that's such a high level question. This is me just being annoying. But like why do we even have this discussion? What are they used for? Why does it matter if we all agree on what these words are for?
Do you want to go first, Wally? Or
I mean, I guess it's just like it's like a very necessary, but I guess sometimes quite limiting shorthand, right? I don't. It's the best way to quickly communicate a game to see if it's within your interest, right? To see like grouping slightly similar games together within a category. I guess that's what a genre is, right? It's just grouping stuff together that's kind of the same. And I think it's good to have that shorthand, but I think definitely like sometimes definitions get a little too strict or a little too loose, maybe.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Harvey?
yeah, I mean, it's just we got to be able to talk about games somehow, right? Like if there's no games are so broad in terms of like mechanics, right? Because like if you think about film, genre is more about theming or content or whatever, whereas like if you're describing a game genre, you're describing theming, content, mechanics, whether it's hosted like on an online platform, all of these different separate things. So like if you want to talk about like the conventions of horror games and whatever, you know, that one's a bit easier, but like there's no way to succinctly uh describe a game without starting from like a position of, okay, here's my genre shorthand for what this thing is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like although I do, there's something about games where I'm typically the kind of person who thinks that like the English language is descriptive. It's not like prescriptive. Like words don't define how we use them. How we use them defines the words. But there's something about games that turns me into a crotchety old man who should have a podcast where I advertise supplements or something, where I'm just like, no, these words have to mean things.
Yeah, I think that's where people like to have these discussions slash arguments is when we want game genres to be like a taxonomy system where there are clearly defined rules and boxes, and like, you know, a thing is one thing or another thing, it's not both. Like there are rules around here, and we know that's just not possible. And I think genres ultimately, I'm going to be so annoying here, but I think genres are like the system that like marketing and advertising uses to talk to consumers, and developers use to talk to consumers, and then consumers use to talk to each other. And like art doesn't need boxes until we're trying to sell it to each other. It like, and I may not believe that wholly because I think the concept of genre sort of predates modern capitalism, but in the era of the internet and capitalism, the only reason we care about what these words mean is because we're about to spend money on getting one of them for ourselves, and we're trying to decide whether it's a thing that we want or not. And sometimes we're comparing them for the sake of critique, but even that I think ultimately comes down to purchases. That's what we're all deciding on here in consumer art, is making purchases, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like I do agree. Like it's you know, a marketing thing at the end of the day. It's a very quick marketing shorthand. I say quick, it doesn't feel like it anymore.
No.
Because you go on some Steam pages and it's like a wish product, right? It's like, oh, this is like an action adventure, roguelike, RPG, MMO, first person. And I'm like, when I see like 5 genres like squashed together in a single Steam description, my brain just switches off immediately because I'm like, what actually are you like?
It's the nightmare Amazon product listing effect.
Yeah, it really is. It's like hitting every keyword, especially when some of these genres are like amalgamations of like different genres already put together into one word. So you've got like a twofer among your like 6 other genre descriptions. Oh my, it's I understand why it's done, because again, it's marketing, right? And it's a good way to quickly be like, hey, this is kind of what our game is. If you like any of these things, maybe you will like our thing. But I think there's a line. I feel like there has to be a line. If I see that you're a roguelite deck building FPS MMO RPG fighting game, like I'm immediately just gonna be like, no.
Find me that game right now. I want to know what that game is. Make it real. I out of curiosity, I started pulling up like Steam's actual list of genres, which is lengthy now. Steam has like a categorization system that starts with like high genres, subgenres, and now they have moods. Like their whole system is made to help you like make sense of their enormous storefront, right? But even their high level genres, I mean, you go from action to like role playing to adventure, but then you get things like casual as a genre, and you're like, okay. And then you get things like shmup is in there.
Ugh.
And that looks like some weird vestigial limb when I pulled it up, because it's not even capitalized like all their other genres are. Shmup is just kind of like there, shoot 'em up. And like military is a genre, and racing and then versus racing sim are separate genres in Steam. All of these things are just like in the drop down if you go to like browse in Steam.
Military?
I swear to you, it's in there. There's like 40 things.
I think there's a dwarf tag on Steam now, isn't there? I think Deep Rock Galactic and another game like banded together to get dwarf is an official tag on Steam.
Surely that's just like a tag though, and not like a genre. Like it's one of their moods or something. It's
Dwarf
probably
game.
a different part of their categorization system. Like it's not a genre, surely. But even our high level genres, we sometimes argue over. Harvey, I want you to bring up the action RPG and ARPG discussion, because this is before we even get into talking about things that are genres called names of other games.
Yeah,
like this is just our high level stuff.
And we can roll in, I think, cRPGs into this as well. But like honestly, JRPGs too. Like for some reason, the RPG genre and like its sub genres or different types of genres is just cursed to have like a extremely unhelpful letter before the rest of the acronym. But like ARPGs in particular, if we're using that example, are just like, okay, what is an action RPG? Well, it's an RPG that is more action focused, right? So, maybe the FF7 remake would be, no, wrong. It's an isometric, loot heavy, hordes of enemies, one specific kind of game. But, the term action in that genre name is doing almost nothing to help describe what the actual thing is. Same with cRPG, right? Computer RPG, I think, is the full sort of acronym. Which made sense at a time, right? Because that's a genre that evolved at a time when that kind of game was only possible really with the space and the sort of computing power of like a computer, when you're like, at least when you're comparing it to something like the NES or something. But
or tabletop, it was specifically a computer digital.
Yeah, exactly. So it made sense at a time, but as time has gone on, it's just like, here's a cRPG you can play on your PS5, and it's like, come on.
One might suggest now that the C stands for classic instead of computer. Things are allowed to change. I think that it should. I think that's totally valid, and we should admit that cRPG is now a classic RPG because it's now a particular style, and it's not just computer. Do you guys buy into that?
I buy into that. Yeah.
I'm about to show my entire nerd ass, but like,
oh no,
you would consider like Baldur's Gate 3 like a cRPG kind of
yes.
in that vein, right?
Yes.
So the rule set it's based off of came out in 2014 and is still being played. Like it's it's not like the mechanics of the game aren't classic, which is where I would start having issues with like the C being for classic, because it's like,
you don't think so?
I mean, okay, yes, 2014 is technically 10 years ago, but
the rule set is a recent adaptation of a long running rule set that one might call classic.
I don't know. I don't know.
No.
Well, then you get to like, is Disco Elysium a classic RPG in that sense? And it's like, well,
Yes.
I love
but,
this
oh,
fight.
if dice are involved, maybe.
Yes. That's one of the rules. If dice are involved, it's a classic RPG. I have decided. I don't care how new your dice are.
It's kind of as well, right? It's like a JRPG is not necessarily, that term has kind of gone beyond what it originally was, right? It was originally an RPG made by a Japanese developer. But now, like, some people call Honkai Star Rail a JRPG, a game that is made by a Chinese studio, right? And I feel like JRPG hasn't evolved like drastically, but I definitely feel like it's become less of like a technicality and more of like a vibe, right? Which I feel like maybe cRPG is the
Do you think
is maybe the same.
That's how we should be using it as a vibe, or do you think there is an identifiable like set of gameplay mechanics that were and maybe still are JRPGs?
Don't ask me, I'm just a woman.
Molly, how dare you?
I'm just a woman
I don't know
trying to
anything
get
about
by
video
in life. Don't ask me such.
She just wants to play her JRPGs in peace.
Such devastating world-ending questions. Yeah, like, okay, JRPG, I definitely feel like, yeah, it is kind of a vibe, but I think it is like a JRPG and an RPG are so distinctly different. You know, I think even though like both might have like a party system, I feel like a party system in like a JRPG is a lot more of like its focal point, maybe. I think like party systems are a lot more focal in JRPGs. I think there's like a story flow to JRPGs in general as well. That
they are usually linear. They are usually not open world. They usually have a party. They usually are turn-based, oftentimes. They usually have a leveling system that's automated, where you don't control the inputs of your character stats the way you would in a cRPG. I know, Harvey, usually.
I
think
just
those
played
things...
FF7 Remake. I just played FF7
Maybe
Remake.
it's not a JRPG.
Well, the one thing that sticks out in my mind is that JRPGs, and it's the only, and I agree that it's like a useful terminology, but I don't know what it describes. But one of the major things is a JRPG typically also has like a named, fully developed like protagonist. I think there are some older JRPGs that like you name them, but they still have like a default name. It's like a JRPG will follow like a sort of like set story where, you know, more sort of classic RPGs allow you to sort of like have a blank slate character that you just
like a self-insertion or like a OC kind of situation.
Because they're usually not a derivative of a tabletop RPG, right? Like that's sort of what cRPGs came out of, was tabletop RPGs, and those like the idea of like you choosing your levels, you creating your character, you having this party of adventurers. And JRPGs, although they are role-playing games, don't, I'm talking out of my ear here, maybe there's some history that I just don't know, but I don't think they are of that same lineage, right? They're just like a different kind of role-playing game that has similar mechanics but don't have those elements. But so it's like JRPG still a useful term? I don't know. Big maybe. I'm big maybe on JRPG. We can stop using it because I think there are other things that describe those mechanics in more useful ways if we can't agree on what a JRPG is. Because it's not just an RPG made in Japan, because Elden Ring isn't one. That's an action RPG.
Exactly. Yeah. It's changed. And, you know, again, this is like kind of back to genres can be very stupid. And that's why I said, like, I think while it can be good shorthand, I think it can be very limiting as well to be like, this is a JRPG, and perhaps ignore like all of the other things that it is. I guess that it like doesn't necessarily fall within the realms of that genre. I don't know.
I will say the action RPG versus ARPG will always frustrate me because there are ARPGs, an acronym which stands for Action RPG, which is not to be confused with action spelled out RPG, because an action RPG is Elden Ring, or you know, any of the Dark Souls games, or like The Witcher 3 is an action RPG. An ARPG is Diablo, specifically top down clicking action combat, lots of enemies, not a party based, sometimes co-op. um they have the same name. They mean the same thing, but they mean different things. It's infuriating. It's like homophones or
it's
homonyms.
it's stupid, because I will say, because you brought up like racing versus racing sim earlier, and I will defend that, because like those arcade racers and racing sims, they very clearly distinguish themselves. An ARPG and an action RPG, no. Like it took me far too many years of my life to realize that an ARPG was not in fact an action RPG. Like it's you don't have to share the same space. You can go somewhere else and do your own thing.
We need to go backwards. They're not allowed to be ARPGs anymore. They have to be Diablo-likes, actually.
Which one came first, actually? Did the ARPG or the action RPG
know.
come first?
I don't know. I did not look into this.
I imagine the ARPG came before the action RPG. That sentence sucks. That sentence I just said sucks. Just like, well, it's just like, you know, I think most people would describe
is
it
a
like
taco a sandwich?
Is a taco a sandwich, or is a taco a hard shell sandwich? Is essentially the conversation we're having here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a like, if you go into action RPGs, I would be like a third person action RPG, or like there's a reason why when those sets of mechanics made their way to shooters, we started calling them looter shooters, because the sentence ARPG FPS that's too many letters. Used to be a ARPG Q+. That's my new genre name I've made up.
Molly, since you brought up again the like racing sim versus sim, it makes me think of another place that genres get used, which is in awards shows and like in our own awards as well. And we, every year when we do awards, we spend a lot of time litigating, because we don't have the same categories every year. In PC Gamer's Game of the Year awards, we decide what awards we're giving based on the games we want to award, and then we have to debate what award we're giving a thing. This happened just last year, I swear, with, I don't remember which games it was. We were like, we can't give it the best blank award because this game was better, but we're giving it an award and we're calling it a different category.
Yeah, we had this trouble with Dredge. I think.
Is that what it was?
We struggled. Yeah, we struggled.
We couldn't call it best horror. We were like, it's not the best horror game, but it's the best something.
And it's like not really a horror. Like, it's like not really a horror, but it's not really a fishing game. Like, to prioritize like one of those elements over the other kind of negates the point of what that game is. And I remember we were really going back and forth trying to like nail down in just one word like what Dredge was and what made it like as special as it was. I think we gave it best setting or best like okay, because I was gunning for
I looked it up.
vibes.
We gave it best setting, which is the best we could do.
I think the thing that we all came to the conclusion of was like, it's just got very good vibes. Like, and apparently, according to people who get paid more than me in this job, you cannot give a game an award for best vibes. So we had to go for best setting.
One of these years, we're going to win and we're going to give a game best vibes. We're going to do it.
Best vibes. Because that's the thing, right? Sometimes, like, I feel like, you know, genres exist, but I think more and more we're kind of gearing towards like what vibes a game has as well. I think sometimes people
as a concept separate from
in
mechanics.
Yeah, and like or like vibes as opposed to genre. Like we will probably end up talking about cozy as like as a descriptor, right? But I think, you know, cozy is not a genre, but you already get an idea of what it is based off like when people, oh, it's a cozy game. And it's like, you immediately have some semblance of what that game is, even if they all have like very different mechanics. I feel like vibes can be
it implies some mechanics, but doesn't prescribe the mechanics.
Yeah. That kind
for
of thing,
sure.
Right?
The other thing I was thinking about was the Game Awards categories, because this comes up every year. The Game Awards does keep the same categories every year, and they have a simulation and strategy category, which is a source of drama every year, because the nominees in that category last year were Advanced Wars, City Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem, and Pikmin 4. We're all in the same category together of simulation and strategy. And this is what we are dealing with when we're talking
One of those
about
things is
genres.
not like the others.
Which one? Which one, Molly? I can name 3 of those, which is
I know
not like the others.
several of them are not like the others, in fact.
I'm just like, oh yes, City Skylines fans are really excited for Fire Emblem.
Uh-huh.
I would imagine there's so much crossover between the Advance Wars and the Pikmin girlies. There's so much going. Yeah, like
is.
It's stupid.
Is Pikmin like Fire Emblem?
I don't think Pikmin is anything like Fire Emblem. I don't
But
think
you have
Fire Emblem is specifically like Fire Emblem sometimes.
But you have little guys who can die and you're commanding them.
This is true. We need a new genre for commanding little guys. Put Pal World in it too.
There's also like, I mean, this is another grenade to throw into this bushel of grenades that we've sort of gathered here.
A whole basket of grenades.
A whole basket of grenades, but the definition of indie is like super thorny, because it's come, you know, strictly speaking, it's like, is this studio independent? But you know, Baldur's Gate 3 is an independent. Larian Studios is an independent studio. But if Baldur's Gate 3 won any sort of indie award, people would be, I think, justifiably kind of
cars on fire.
Yeah, cars on fire. Just because, like, you know, there's a difference. It's almost come to mean more, and this is what I mean by like descriptive rather than prescriptive, right? It's like it's come to mean more a function of studio size and budget rather than, you know, whether this
financial
studio
situation,
has a publisher.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like indie is definitely, like you say, just one of those terms that has it's evolved beyond its original meaning, right? Like a lot of independent developers are getting pretty good funding now. Like, as I say, a lot, like a handful are getting like considerable funding. Kickstarter is a thing that wasn't really a thing when like indies were first kind of coming out of the woodwork, right? And I think they're definitely, like you say, I think it's definitely more of like, again, it's kind of a vibe at this point. It's like, is Baldur's Gate 3 an indie? No, it's an independently developed game. But then, like, you know, Lethal Company is an indie, for example. That's independently developed, right? Stardew Valley is an indie, even though now I feel like a lot of people wouldn't call it an indie. I don't know.
Dave the Diver was I think the most notable example, right? Because I think that studio fully has a publisher behind it. But
yeah, it has like a like it's backed by a publisher. Yeah, like I think it's backed by like Nexon. It's backed by like one of the like the big Korean,
a big publisher, and yet it gives the vibe of indie, right?
Yeah. So,
Molly, you brought up cozy, and I'm not going to go into a full hour of cozy games, even though I could, which is why I don't want to spend too much time on it. But that is part of the reason I feel it's so important to like continue grappling with these words that we're using and what they mean. And even if we can never fully define them, to like keep having the conversation, because like the reason I find it important in cozy games, because it's like, as you said, a vibe, not a description of mechanics, is that like entire like influencer accounts are built on the concept of cozy games. Like I talk about and I write news stories and I describe games as cozy, and when like me as media or an influencer as an influencer are telling like you, a consumer, about a game and calling it a thing, we're like, we have a responsibility to you to not be like misleading you and telling you something is that thing when it's not. And like that's why the words matter to me, is because we all have we're trusting each other with this language. Like you are following an influencer on TikTok, or you are looking at a news story on pcgamer.com and you're trusting that when we say the word, we sort of mean the same thing as you, and ideally you watch the rest of the video or watch the rest of the article, or read the rest of the article to make sure that's true. But sometimes you might just look at the headline or listen to the first sentence before swiping.
People don't do that, surely.
Nobody
Surely
would
not.
do that.
Nobody would. Nobody would do that.
Nobody would comment on a TikTok video and say, "Didn't watch the whole thing. Have a comment anyway."
Never, ever, ever. But yeah, like it's you know, we complain and we say genres are stupid, but it is a way to keep everyone on the same page, right? Like, if I knew nothing about Elden Ring and you told me that Elden Ring was a JRPG, I would have like a vastly different idea of what Elden Ring was versus like what it actually is, right? Like, you have to sort of play by the genre rules, even if you think they're stupid, as I do. I think they're stupid, but it's definitely like it's a good way to get everyone on the same page.
It's also
if you don't like it.
It's also like useful for developers, right? It's useful for them to have like a language of mechanics too. Are we gonna get into the Souls-like?
Oh, I was about to tee you up for it, Harvey. Are you ready? Because now that we've talked about words with abstract meanings that we've all agreed on, let's talk about words with very literal meanings, because we are calling games like other very specific games. I know Molly has opinions about Souls-like. We've got Roguelike. We've got the Metroidvania. Back yonder, I don't want to forget about the Doom clone era before we started calling things FPSs. I think that's a really important data point, is that sometimes the things change. Sometimes maybe Souls-likes will eventually blossom and like create their own name. I don't know who's going to do it or how it's going to happen, but maybe they'll have a new acronym and they won't be Doom clones forever.
Yeah, I mean, like, I completely, I mean, I looked at your notes and I do completely agree that the word Souls-like is useful. It does describe a set of mechanics. I think the thing that bothers me the most about it, and it's like a very temporary problem, because with roguelikes and with Metroidvanias, you don't have this problem because the games that those genre names are coined after are not games that like the majority of gamers have played. They are, you know, not every. I would wager that most people who play roguelikes probably haven't played like the original like Rogue. Most people who enjoy modern Metroidvanias probably haven't gone back and played like the original Metroid or Castlevania games. But Soulslikes have this issue where anytime, because the genre is like new enough to sort of like be a problem, whenever you discuss them, you always wind up comparing them to like the same 3 or 4 games, and I think that's kind of annoying in a way. Not that it's not like warranted, but I remember I can't remember, and this is not me like dumping on the article, because it was like a, you know, completely valid piece of criticism. But when I was reviewing Lords of the Fallen and looking around for sort of opinions on that, I read one review which was essentially just kind of comparing it to Elden Ring the whole time. And it made some very valid points, but also like you hit a point where you're no longer like assessing the game itself on its own merits, and instead you are like eternally, you know, back comparing it to like the same three or four titles. It's not as if when we review an FPS we're constantly going to the original Doom and comparing it.
It's not Doom enough.
Yeah, it's not Doom enough. Like, why is the world building not like Doom? Why is the setting not Doomish? I don't think this game, you know, I don't think Modern Warfare captures the same spirit of Doom. It's like, yeah, that's my major problem, and I can't wait for the genre name to hopefully change or hit roguelike / Metroidvania levels of obscurity.
Yeah. What about you, Molly?
No,
I know you have Souls-like opinions too.
I do agree though, because like it's true, right? It's almost like it's used as a genre, right? It's supposed to be a genre, but it is not judged in that way. It is judged in direct, I think, because maybe the Souls games are still very new. Demon Souls was like what, like 06, 07, something, maybe like slightly earlier than that. It is not even 20 years old at this point, right? Whereas you're comparing to maybe like Castlevania and Metroid games, which are at this point like well into their like 30, maybe 30 to 40, talk like 80s, maybe. That's what we're talking, right?
Is this going to be one of
I don't
those
know what
weird?
years happened.
Is this going to be one of those weird things where we find out that like the time difference between Doom and Demon Souls is in fact shorter than the time between Demon Souls and now? Is it going to be one of those things?
For
No,
sure.
no, I don't want to hear
Surely
about
not.
that. Nope. But like, I think because the Souls series is so recent, right? Like the same happens with I think maybe one of the newest genres, I guess. I don't know if we've cemented it as a genre yet. Is like the survivors genre, you know, the vampire survivors esque.
Oh, okay.
I feel like maybe that's one of the newest genres that has emerged in recent years, and a lot of games from that are still compared to vampire survivors, right? They're kind of like, oh, this game does this better than vampire survivors, but it also does this worse than vampire survivors, right? And I think maybe Soulslikes fall into that same criticism, but because, you know, Metroid and Castlevania are a lot older, I feel like maybe those comparisons aren't made as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
That makes sense. I hear both of you, and I think you're probably right, and I'm just living in the future that's 10 more years from now, when we like are not inherently comparing things to like whether it's actually better or worse than literally Dark Souls, but we're talking about how good the game is individually and just agreeing, yeah, it has Dark Souls mechanics, because I think we can agree on what those mechanics are pretty easily. Like if you say a game is a Souls-like, I know it has an experience point system that's used as a currency that you lose when you die. You have prominent boss battles that are like the end cap of an exploration section, and it's usually action combat. I don't know if I've seen anything that's not action combat described as a Souls-like. I'm sure someone will come up with an example of something that's turn-based and got described as Souls-like, but I would argue with that descriptor, I think. And I think because those mechanics are all implied when you say Souls-like, I'm like, okay, it has use to me, for sure. Like that tells me something about that game if you call it a Souls-like. I'm expecting those, like at least two of the three of those things, if not literally all three of them, to be present.
I think for me, there's also a component of the issue with those original Souls games being so dependent on like a I don't even want to say like they are obviously difficult, but I think it's like both the level of difficulty and also like rigid difficulty of like, here is a difficulty setting that is like meticulously designed and is the intended way to experience the game and whatever. But then you start hitting up against games like Jedi Survivor, which have a lot of Souls-like mechanics in them, but you know the difficulty setting is variable, and in terms of how they play, they're more like action, Metroidvania, adventure, Tomb Raidery. Who knows anymore? I'm losing my mind. Games with a hyphen.
Harvey, I invite you the horrible monkey's paw of maybe the word we need here is Souls Light. Just like a roguelike versus roguelite. We need Souls-like and Souls-light. I haven't seen that word used yet, and it's probably going to make me angry when I do see it used, so I'm sorry I said it out loud.
It will emerge in some way, shape, or format, because the difference between a roguelite and a roguelike is just meta progression, right? Like roguelite
generally agreed upon,
has like some degree of meta progression, whereas roguelike is very much like you die, it's
and you start over.
Yeah, like so maybe
that is meant to be the distinction, whether or not people end up using it that way. Again, whether or not we agree on the words as they're being used, that is supposed to be the distinction between them. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe we will see a Souls Light. Maybe when you die, you don't lose your currency experience. Maybe,
or maybe
I
it's
don't know.
not action. Maybe it's
It's not
turn
action.
based. Maybe something turn based is a rogue. Or I mean, a Souls
Maybe.
light.
Maybe. I don't know. I think the term Souls like is good. I think the way that we use it as a judgment metric is not good. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the term itself is good though. My boyfriend would disagree. He is a Souls like stan. He absolutely loves the Souls games. And I have had to hear far too many times now about how he hates the term Souls like. Do I remember why? No. Because I hear his little like, yeah, I hear the tirade start and I just stop listening. But I think he's kind of the same in the same boat that he doesn't like the comparisons that it generates. He
Sure.
doesn't like like games can't always necessarily like stand on their own 2 feet on their own merits with that genre attached because there's always that comparison at the moment.
What other genres did we have for a minute that then we stopped having? Like we had words for them and then we stopped using. Go, Molly.
Well, was it a genre? In my brain this was a genre. Would you say open world was at one point used as a genre?
I'd say,
Because
yeah.
I feel like there
Like-
was a time where it was just like, it's an open world game.
And you're like,
That's
okay,
it.
and what else?
And it's like, that's what it is. You see this here? It's an open world game. Have fun.
And
To
that's
make-
supposed to imply what, the Ubisoftness of it all? Or
Yeah.
like
Ubisoft light. There's a
Yeah.
word to
Oh my god.
give you psychic damage.
Ubisoft like
For me, I think like if the genre is the noun, then like open world is almost the adjective, right? It just like
Mhm.
it is a descriptor you tack on to another in the same way that you could get like a I don't know, like a survival. Oh god, no, actually that doesn't work. I just thought about the difference between survival horror and survival games and how radically different those two experiences are.
Hugely
And I
Survival
different.
horror and survival plus horror.
yeah.
The
And
two are
then
different.
those are so different, yes.
I will make the world's first survival horror game.
Sons of the Forest, is that survival horror? I'm not joking. The sentence
Is
I
it like
said
a Cold
sucks.
plus Sephora? Like a Sons of the Forest? It's like a survival plus horror.
Survival squared horror.
Yeah,
Survival to the power of 2.
Survival
Because
to
it
the
has
power of
crafting in it.
horror.
It is a survival crafting, which is what survival ends up meaning, really, is like there's a crafting component and like hunger thirst system and whatever else. But survival horror is like don't die, manage your resources, like horror in a different way. It's like a scarcity survival system, not a like maintenance survival system, right?
Mhm.
Is that something?
Well, you have the same thing with like deck builders, right? Like there's a deck builder Tony Hawk's roguelike that I played recently. There's you can
And deck builders aren't card games. Those aren't card games.
Yeah.
exactly
Right? They have cards,
Yeah.
but those are not card games.
I feel like I've ignored deck builders for a very long time just because as a concept that genre confuses me. Which again, right, is like down to communication and it being like a language. Is I don't really have like a super big grasp on what a deck builder is, so I avoid it. But maybe if a game like wasn't marketing itself as a deck builder, would I play it? I don't know.
I was thinking of walking sims as something that we had for a minute. Like that was a genre for a hot minute there, and you don't hear walking sim used anymore.
No.
Very often, right? When's the last time you heard a game calling it, or a player calling a game a walking sim? Like they still exist, and I could tell you what a walking sim is. It's a story focused adventure without combat usually.
Yeah, I feel like
That's
mid
pretty.
2010s was when that was like very big, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
was
Firewatch,
what I meant to be
the
Finch,
walking
right?
sim.
Yeah,
Yes, Edith
it was
Finch too.
Yeah, and like Gone Home isn't quite a walking sim, but it definitely has like walking sim.
Ethan
Yes.
Carter, the Vanishing of Ethan Carter, big walking sim. But it's a puzzle mystery game, right? Like that's what it actually like is. Like that's the mechanics.
Well, I mean, I would argue that Well, actually, Stanley Parable is kind of a mystery game in terms of you trying to get all the endings,
Yeah.
but technically a walking sim if we're going off
Mm-hmm.
of that in that, um but yeah, I mean, I was also thinking about, like, I feel part of my we call games like Disco Elysium and what's that one that's coming up, Thaumaturge, we call those cRPGs, and my heart feels like those need a different name, because like there's a lot of crossover. Like a cRPG player will enjoy a lot of things about Disco Elysium, but like there's it's not the RPG-ness is entirely social, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily what people who would have played, I don't know, Baldur's Gate 1 or 2 would be looking for in that kind of experience.
It's a visual novel, actually.
Visual cRPG.
Don't do this, Lauren.
Visual novel cRPG.
You get 2 minutes on the clock for visual novels. I don't know how much time I spent on cozy games. Hopefully it was
Oh
less
my
than 2
god,
minutes.
wow, yeah. I don't know. I feel like the problem with visual novels isn't the fact that the genre is a mess. It's the judgment of the genre. That's my main issue. Is like,
True.
you pin something as a visual novel and people just switch off because they're like, visual novels aren't real games. I remember no hate to this reviewer. I can't remember their name. I probably don't want to remember their name. No hate to them. Someone reviewed Steins Gate Zero. I forget what website it was for now. And they complained that there was too much text. And I was like, nah.
The too much water of visual game
Wrong.
novel.
It was like, there is too much reading. And it's like, I think there was a time where maybe like games like Danganronpa and Ace Attorney were like popularizing the visual novel genre by blending it with more sort of hands-on interactive elements. And then like kind of the more pure visual novels, I guess, like Steins Gate, like The House of Fata Morgana, and like Clannad, for example, were maybe like viewed as maybe not less than, but like, there became like an expectation, I think, of it being like a little more involved than the genre is.
And that's why the genre names are important, right? Is that because if you go into a game not understanding what it is and you come out disliking something that is a core part of what everybody else understands that genre to be, you were in the wrong place. It may not even be your fault, but you were definitely in the wrong place.
Exactly. It's like Danganronpa is a visual novel, but there is a hell of a lot more going on to it, kind of gameplay wise, than like Steins Gate, for example, where you just kind of open text messages and reply to them sometimes in the middle of things.
So to bring us all the way around, what collection of games or like concept does not have a genre name and it needs one? And do you have a proposal?
Party horror is what I'm officially coining for like your phasmophobias. Yeah, party horror, like your Lethal Company.
Like that.
Yeah, right. Because I feel like Phasmophobia and Lethal Company, yeah, they're horror games, but they're not. They're not. If you like, they're not horror games in my brain. They are party games that are kind of scary. So party horror is what I want to coin officially.
Harvey, do you have one?
I think it's probably going to be that Disco Elysium example.
Yeah.
And I'm currently balancing on the nice edge between like isometric social RPG or like visual novel cRPG. Both of those are bad. I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Horrible.
They're both horrible.
I'm so sorry, Harvey.
Let's just go. Oh, no, social RPG doesn't work. It kind of does, but there is like an essence.
Is The Sims a social RPG?
No, stop it.
A
taco is not a sandwich.
The Sims walked so that Disco Elysium could fly.
Eventually, we're going to have the Game Awards category in which The Sims and Disco Elysium both fit.
Yes. And everybody
we just have an awards ceremonial show where we're just like, and this year the best games, and we just put like The Sims 2 and Disco Elysium there, neither of which came out even remotely recently.
They both have attribute points which determine how you can tackle different things and branching storylines.
You can become a depressed alcoholic and
both?
die in stupid ways.
Right.
Accurate.
The Sims and Disco Elysium are the same genre. I'm calling it here.
That can't be our conclusion. That can't be where.
Okay, hold on, wait. I'll get you another. It's Stardew Valley-like games. That's what needs a genre name. I'm sick of it because I try to write about it and I just like do word soup at the beginning of the story. I like sometimes we call them farm sims. Sometimes we call them life sims, depending on whatever collection of things you're actually doing in it. Sometimes I call them farm life sims because it's the combination that makes it what it is, but I don't have a better idea. And I'm not going to call them Stardew likes. We're past that. We can't do it. It's too late.
Community sims?
Like maybe? And it's not like a social sim either, because that's kind of a different thing. I don't know. Stardew games. What are we going to call them? It's too late to call them Stardew likes, and I wouldn't want to anyway, but
tell us your ideas for Stardew likes.
What's in your heart? And it doesn't have to be good. Mine weren't good, so yours doesn't have to be good.
I really like Party Horror though, Molly. I literally didn't look at your notes. I didn't see the last line that you wrote, and so I'm so glad that was a surprise to me because I like Party Horror.
It's such a great genre, like party horror, everyone. It's a thing.
It's perfect. Well, thank goodness we have solved the eternal question of what things are allowed to be sandwiches and which things are allowed to be roguelikes. Harvey, thank you for joining us.
Solved is doing some heavy lifting there.
We've solved, everyone.
We fixed video games.
Is over. We're done here. I don't want to see you back having this conversation in 6 months. I'm going to refer you right here. Thank you, Harvey, for joining us. As usual, of course, you can find writing from me, Molly, and Harvey at pcgamer.com on, game genres and other such silly things. There is also our usual more news, reviews, guides, opinions, all that good stuff. And you will be able to talk with Molly and I about this week's episode at forums.pcgamer.com. So thank you both. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.